Hi everyone. I'm sorry I couldn't join you today, but I'm happy to give this presentation and hopefully we'll be able to talk to you a little bit about women in STEM today. So let me share my slides here. Hopefully you can see this. Let's see, I'm going to present this. Okay, perfect. So I've been involved with the Kentucky Academy of Sciences before in terms of events. I think Yelena can talk to you about that. But I'm currently a congressional policy fellow in the House of Representatives, which is fascinating by itself. Today, I wanted to talk to you a bit about improving the research enterprise through a robust and diverse STEM workforce. And what this really means, I'm going to talk to you a little bit about my career path and some of the work we've been doing and thinking through in Congress as well. And this is my personal capacity. So first, wanted to just share a bit about my profile. So I grew up in an academic family. I have built curiosity for science since I was a little girl. This has really been instilled in me by my parents and grandparents and multiple generations of scientists and strong women role models too. So I pursued a PhD in biochemistry, cell and developmental biology. I studied skeletal muscle growth. During this time, again, worked for actually one of two female PIs in my department at Emory. And that also shaped my experience in terms of being able to work for a really strong role model, someone who was not afraid to stand up for themselves and bureaucracy that they were dealing with there, but also just instilling in us really opportunities to do well, to speak up for what we believe in, and to follow our dreams. And really, more practically, honestly, it also helped to keep us organized and accountable for the work that we were doing in the lab, and that has stayed with me ever since until now, and will forever, I'm sure. So during my career, I worked at different types of universities, both public and private, different types of programs. I've witnessed how women and girls are treated in different institutions, different cultures, different types of departments, programs that were large and small. And so I've really been interested in how we can support women in STEM in that sense in a number of institutions. This really also extends to being able to see how universities can support really the next generation. So how do we really improve the workforce, right? And so I think of that as, grads and postdocs, trainees who are interested in science and want to stay in research. And women have been, of course, underrepresented for a number of years, which is well known, and I'll talk a bit about that. But that really also includes being able to do this in terms of career development, training, and mentoring, and really being a role model for folks coming after us. And as we've had role models ourselves, and really trying to be that for the next generation. So I enjoy volunteering to talk to girls who are interested in science, but middle school and high school, now even grad students who want to go into policy. Happy to talk about that. But I've always enjoyed really being a mentor and role model to support grads and postdocs from different backgrounds, as well as women in science, and again, girls interested in science as well. So throughout my career, I've done research, I've advocated for change, and also developed tools to change policy in terms of research. So I call it research policy, but it's really related to policy for science. How do we improve the practice of science? And that includes the workforce too. And so nowadays, I'm in Congress, which is fascinating in itself. But I have worked to, again, support a STEM workforce for my current position. And I'll talk a bit about some of the pieces of legislation we've been looking at. There's a lot more, and it's a very fast-paced environment, but happy to chat about that too. So my journey in academic research and really out of academia, which has been most of my career after leaving, has been starting with trying to really improve training and programming in institutions. As a postdoc, I created this craft seminar, which is career research advancement focused training at U of L, where I was a postdoc. And so the series essentially looked at how we can support postdocs in the university. We had a monthly seminar, and a lot of my interests at the time were around career development. And this is what the craft series was for. So I learned about different types of career options, including policy talks. So I'm showing you a couple of talks here. One was careers in science policy. The other one is from pipettes to policy, by two women who are really good role models in the field as well. Again, Megan Mott and Yvette Seeger, who are both built careers in policy. Other things I've done, and this is also just to give you an idea of the things you can do along the way. I have organized a research symposium to bring together different trainees and scientists from the Midwest at the time. And that was a really good skill. As in policy, there's a lot of building coalitions and doing events to get people to talk about different issues. I was also on a postdoc committee. This is also to give you a bit of a idea of what you could do, and starting early if you're interested in committees and those kinds of things are good for leadership. And also I was a part of the leadership for the National Postdoc Association and the Graduate Career Consortium. Both of these are groups of administrators that help trainees and grads and postdocs help navigate different careers. And so that's certainly one career path. But really, this gave me a good network of folks that are able to, again, help the next generation, planted a bit of a seed in terms of an interest in workforce development and how we can support the future of science. Another really seminal experience after this, after leaving my postdoc, was getting involved with this nonprofit called Future of Research, which was sort of a think tank group. We did research on postdoc salaries, which is very meaningful given I had left my postdoc. And so in 2016, they're doing this research project looking at how universities comply to a federal labor law mandating that postdoc salaries would increase. So essentially, if you made below $50,000 a year, regardless of the location, you would then essentially be able to look at how the universities would comply with this federal law, which is the top graph here. At a certain point in time, we're looking at whether institutions would raise the salaries and whether or not they had made a decision about raising the salaries at that point in time. So this was really one of the first few publications in this space. And it was really fascinating because it looked at the impacts of a federal policy on postdocs. And really before that time, I hadn't really thought about how postdocs can be influenced by the federal law. We also published a number of other papers. I'm just showing you one here, looking at research culture and how trainees provided recommendations of how we can improve training, which is very fascinating. And a lot of that has been looking at, again, inputs from trainees and how we can make things better in higher ed. We also organize symposia around leadership and try to promote early career leadership in science and different boards and committees. We published on the workforce, and again, these are a couple of publications here. And then we also really push for policy changes to help institutions to do better by their postdocs and pay them better. That was one of the things. So this was really my first sort of foray into the impacts of federal policy on the academic workforce and research. After that, I decided to really follow my interest in advocacy with a number of roles. And so one was a fellowship at Society for Neuroscience, where We looked at science legislation related to neuroscience research, or I should say more broadly, scientific research, responding to NIH RFIs, which is requests for information. So when they're looking for opportunities to respond to policy, different types of questions and forms where the community can respond. And we also had an advocacy newsletter, which is looking at how we were able to really summarize federal issues for the membership to be able to highlight for them what was important for a neuroscience community. So this was really instrumental, again, in understanding how a society advocates for funding, for training, how they engage their early career members and policy and advocacy and so on. So highly recommend, if you're interested in advocacy, doing a position like this through a society can be very impactful. After that, I went back to my roots in academic issues, worked for University of California Federal Relations Office. So I'm showing you a couple of projects here. Really, the main goal was to advocate on behalf of the university with Congress and federal agencies, understand more about what kinds of grants a university could apply to. I should say researchers themselves could apply to. We also analyzed bills on science issues and research, organized briefings and different policy discussions. And so one that was really seminal in the top left here was a briefing on the impacts of COVID-19 on early career researchers and how grads and postdocs in the system were impacted by COVID, both in terms of federal funding and some of their, obviously, their career trajectories as well. A lot of this work, we also were able to actually implement an amendment in the CHIPS and Science Act on postdocs, so which is really satisfying. And of course, the CHIPS and Science became a law, which was really, I think, once in a lifetime, to be honest, to be able to be a part of something like that. After that, I became more interested in implementation of policy. So I worked with Federation of American Scientists on a policy entrepreneurship project, which really looked at implementation of policy ideas. Their project, it's called Day One Project. It's looking at, it says changing policy from a noun to a verb. So I really like that. The idea was, how can we implement ideas such as from the CHIPS and Science Act in the executive branch and different areas there. So this is, I think, a really good sort of snapshot of different careers and opportunities that you can have. And again, coming back to women in STEM, a lot of these are things I hadn't really anticipated that I could be a part of, and opportunities arose and I took them. And so I encourage you to do that too, because none of them are easy things to do, but they're really nice, opportunities to grow and learn about policy from different angles. So don't be shy to go after what you want to do. I also want to now honing more on women in STEM. There's a few blogs out there, and so I've also tried to contribute to this literature, I suppose. I actually started writing about women in STEM probably around 2016. So this blog in the far left from ASCB, Women in STEM, still so few and far between. This is something I had actually been writing about then for a number of years. This is, I think, my first blog ever. My writing has improved a lot since that point. But this is really something I've always believed was important. So I think that blog is still online. You can read that. But obviously, we know that women are still underrepresented. And this is not something that's easy to change, right? But one way to do that is to just highlight the problem. Highlight women that are good role models. So I interviewed a friend of mine, Anne Kornherens, who was a fellow at the National Science Foundation, and she was part of AWIS, Association for Women in Science. And it was a really nice interview with her and way to honor her. And again, role models like this that are, sort of peers who are able to do really interesting things, and we should elevate each other. Another article I wrote is men as advocates for women in STEM, which actually got a really good reception because this had been really interesting. Of course, everyone says we need to support women in STEM, but also men need to do it too. So we can support each other, but obviously men a lot of times get ahead in a number of issues. So I think this article actually, again, got real interesting receptions in terms of, and people like the idea of trying to get the men to be advocates for women, in which we also need. And the right side is a blog spotlight by Lab Manager where they highlighted some of my contributions to policy. So I'm always showing this because I think it's also useful to highlight media and opportunities where we've been highlighted ourselves, not to be shy to showcase that. And of course, this is a good place to read more about my career too. So these kinds of blogs can be a good way to highlight the issues and also showcase women that have done really good things, and we need to celebrate each other too. What other things have been done? Another way to do this is through reports and legislation. So I've already sort of alluded to this. National Academies had a report on sexual harassment, which is really prevalent. I shouldn't say really prevalent. It is really important to think about some of these systemic issues that impact women. This is a very interesting report, which was followed up by some visits to institutions and being able to try to implement some of the recommendations in the report. So these reports are good ways to see, understand the background, and also showcase really potential recommendations that can be transformative to change the system. So I recommend reading this report because it was very unique and had a big impact at the time. Another one is legislation. I already highlighted Chips and Science Act. This was signed into law by President Biden, highlighted a lot of different types of diversity initiatives, many spearheaded by the late Eddie Bernice Johnson, and was really also, this is actually a great article, to look at, pieces of legislation that have really championed, again, diversity in STEM and women, and just generally opportunities to learn about what lawmakers are doing to support the future of science. And then, of course, during the pandemic, we should not forget that women have, suffered a lot and their careers as well. So I wanted to highlight again a few articles and opportunities to read more about this and learn. One is, again, a National Academies report on COVID-19. This really highlighted the impacts of COVID on women's STEM in terms of careers, their lack of advancement. We also know that they published less during the pandemic. And then they had really other barriers too, in terms of publications, grants, career advancement, and all these articles. There were a number of articles that came out at the time around impacts of COVID and how women were really disadvantaged, and many changed careers after that and so on. So we should not forget this, because I think even though this was 2020, we're still feeling the impacts today, and this is a long-term problem. The pandemic has really derailed careers of women in science. And also, again, we're still feeling that today, and it has really impacts on the pipeline overall. So good resources to read and learn more about what the issues are, and also what recommendations there might be. And a lot of these also have good stories of women that were impacted by COVID and what they did after. Fast forward to today, these are two bills from the 118th Congress. So still not too fairly recent, from December 2019, and then the other one is March 2023. So first and second session, sorry, it's going backwards. So I'm going to start with the one on the left here. And this is really to showcase that Congress is doing things, is really showcasing, again, opportunities to engage and highlight these messages about why women in STEM are important and how we can help them succeed. So this bill on the left is called 21st Century STEM for Girls and Underrepresented Minorities Act. Its goal is to amend a previous bill providing grants to encourage girls and underrepresented minorities to pursue studies and careers in STEM fields. So you could read this here. It is really sort of a basic piece of legislation looking to support these populations in STEM, and it's really nice to see that there are very specific bills on that. The one on the right is from the first session of the 180th Congress. This is more of a workforce bill to amend a workforce bill that existed before, creating new programs. Again, this is for re-entry into the STEM workforce, underrepresented populations that have left for whatever reason, and they're able to now provide funding to businesses that are in STEM to offer paid internships and other returnships. Again, this is for folks that have left the workforce for a number of years, and that's called the STEM Restart Act. Really important too, because we should not forget that folks do leave the workforce, and coming back is important to support them as well. So just two really interesting bills. I would recommend that you review them to understand kind of what is going on at the legislative branch and what sorts of bills exist and who's introduced them. Think a little bit more about how these have made an impact, because this is definitely a place where you can see how these kinds of bills really show the message that women in STEM matter, and we need to bring them back. I've already alluded to this idea of diversity, right? So I think we're in a tough spot right now. I don't want to comment a whole lot on this, because the point is that I think we need diversity in STEM. One way to raise your voice in supporting women in STEM would be by responding to requests for information in the Federal Register, which we did here. This was part of the work we were doing with the UC system. We contributed to this paragraph about racial equity and diversifying the STEM workforce, which was sent to NSF for the strategic plan. So these kinds of RFIs can be a good way to make your voice heard. Respond to this, and I can tell you that it does go to the agency. And it does showcase the community input. The second one is to look a bit about, places that do research like this, like the Pew Research Center, looking at STEM jobs, how these have changed, how really higher education has changed because of the pipeline and COVID as well. And so that's a good resource if you want to learn more, is to go to the Pew Research Center website and look at some of these articles about gender, race, and ethnic diversity. And another resource, I've already showed you, Association for Women in Science. Another one is AAUW, which is, again, has published a number of reports and articles on this. So again, good ways to learn more about this from these really groups that focus also on women and data on women in STEM. So to think more about the underrepresentation, we know that this actually happens at all levels. So I think this data is a bit out of date, but it still highlights really the major themes. And this is that at the college level, there are only 21% of engineering majors that are women, 19% in computer science, information science are women. So we know computer science has always been a field where women are underrepresented, and that's well known. In specific fields like health, for example, not just pure science, health executives and board members, only 21% are women. So this is something I'm a big advocate for, including women in science and boards and committees, because I think there's still, and also CEO positions, but there's still very few women in those roles. And so that's something to advocate for and continue to support women in those fields. In general jobs, and again, this only focuses on computer fields and also engineering, 38% of women only in computers and 24% in engineering. And this is, again, very low. Both of these fields are very well known that women are underrepresented in both of these fields. So that's why I'm showing those two. And then salaries, of course, we know that women are paid less. So, for example, at this point in time when this report came out, men were making about 15,000 more per year than women. And also Latina and Black women in STEM earned about 33,000 less, which is one average of 52,000 a year. Again, huge discrepancies. Underrepresentation remains a problem, as we know. As we have thought about, some of this can happen at the level of, again, legislative branch, also agencies, and also universities, different players that really have a role in this. So what are really the barriers to change, right? So we all know the environment, bias in disciplines, environment, you can think about this also sexual harassment, those sorts of things. There's a lot of bias in, again, computer science and engineering. Recommendations that could help. Actually, let me go through the barriers first. Another problem is that there's very low role models still. Again, many of us try to do that, but there's also a lot of barriers still to being able to highlight, especially role models from certain cultures who maybe not want to come forward, but we need you. So please do that because the next generation needs you. And a lot of cultures are still male dominated, again, especially as you move up the career ladder. Women, again, make less money. And again, they're not necessarily higher level, higher up at CEO levels and so on. These are all well-known things. I think probably you all know these things. I would say from the standpoint of someone who had worked to really help support this and encourage exploration, talk to girls in middle school and high school, right? I really want to encourage them to explore STEM careers, to find role models who can support them. And I'm happy to talk to anyone who wants to reach out and talk about my career, because I do believe that's important that we continue this pipeline. We also need more mentorship and training. This includes both helping women themselves to support others, but also to really help mentor other women and girls, to lift them up, lift as you go up, right? Put the ladder behind you and help somebody else come after you. And also in terms of the pay and other inequities, I think some opportunities exist to provide more flexibility and equity in terms of finances, and also more support for childcare, which is a huge problem as well. And that's something that we're trying to change and work on, because, again, women are disadvantaged in that sense. So these are all things that we know need to happen. And so I wanted to sort of plant the seed here that we can all make a bit of change where we are, and we should try to do that on a daily basis. So that's all I had to say today. I'm happy to leave you with my contact information, LinkedIn and Twitter. Forgot to put the blue sky here. But if you go to my website, adrianabankston.com, you'll also see all of my contacts, all the different social media channels. And I want to just encourage you to keep in touch with me and chat more if you have questions, if you'd like to talk more about some of the work I've done. And again, continue to support each other in STEM fields. And thank you again for organizing this event and the opportunity to speak to you.